And before I get started, can you see your own videos or is it just the screen? I just don't want it to be distracting. Maybe I'll do that. Okay, perfect. Well, since we're a kind of smaller group, I would love for, if you have any questions throughout, like definitely just unmute. We can kind of have a conversation. That I always think that that's fun. So I'll just start by introducing myself. Again, thanks so much for having me to talk. I'm from Earthjustice. My name's Yasmine Agelidis. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an associate attorney. I am based in the Los Angeles office. I work as part of our California regional team, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about the organization, how we work and the kind of stuff that we work on. And then I'm gonna just talk a little bit about some of my projects that I'm excited about. So thanks for letting me talk about that, because I do love that work. And yeah, I'm excited to share it. And, Earthjustice as a whole, but then I also do a lot of work with Xero Club. So it's really great to, to get to know some of you more. So thanks. So before I even get in, I'll just kind of tell you a little bit about myself and what brought me to environmental law, since it's just a nice little group of us. So I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley. I studied political science and minor in conservation and resource studies, and then global poverty and practice. And then after I graduated, I knew that I wanted to do something that was gonna, like you all, do something to kind of affect change, but didn't know what that looked like. And then kind of went to law school and found environmental law. And after law school, I worked for a judge for a year in New York City and really got the opportunity to learn about litigation and how to bring a case and all that kind of stuff. And then I went to a big law firm for 6 months and realized that is not for me. And I ended up at Earthjustice almost 3 years ago. And so really grateful to be here and do all this work. So you probably, you may know about Earthjustice or maybe not, but I thought I'd just kind of start by introducing the organization. We're founded just over 50 years ago, and we started out as the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. So we really worked closely with the Sierra Club. And then I think 20 years after we were founded in the 90s, we started, we had a lot of other clients as well. And so we renamed in order to kind of represent that we work with a lot of folks. And so now we are Earthjustice. Our motto is because the earth needs a good lawyer, which I always kind of love. And our big, our sort of the big thing about how we work is we use the law, we use our partnerships with different organizations like Sierra Club and so many others to protect people's health, to preserve natural places and wildlife, and to advance clean energy and combat climate change. And one other really big thing is that we represent all of our clients for free. This is really important because it means that we are able to, give the best support and advice and advocacy without having to see if our clients can pay for that. We just provide that service free of charge. So the organization is really big, actually. We've got 14 regional offices, over 170 lawyers, over 630 active legal proceedings. We're just doing a ton of work, and that doesn't even take into account the advocacy work that we do before different agencies, communications. It's just a lot. I'm continually impressed every day with the work that folks are doing. And there's three, with all this, there's 3 big buckets of work. Kind of introduced them before, but public lands, oceans, and wildlife. So, that is kind of self-explanatory. Healthy communities. So this is protecting against pollution and toxic chemicals, clean energy and climate. And my work is kind of at the intersection of these last two. So healthy communities and then clean energy and climate. So the California Regional Office, which I'm a part of, we've got folks in the LA office and in San Francisco office that are part of this team. We, folks are working on all kinds of issues. I think that Earthjustice at large is just doing a ton of stuff. And I think our office is like a little microcosm of that. We're just doing all different kinds of things. People are working on getting us off of fossil fuels to zero emissions, fighting dangerous pesticide use, preserving wild spaces, ending oil and gas extraction, cleaning the air. I mean, and there's more. There's more, I think. So yeah, a lot of different work. But what really ties us together is that we're, primarily working on addressing all these issues in California. So what I work on, I'm finally getting to that part, is what's called our Right to Zero campaign. So, we know that burning any kinds of fossil fuels is harmful to our health, to our communities, and to the environment. And so this campaign is really centered around the idea that we need to transition from fossil fuel powered technology to zero emissions. And so we're really focused on three, very big sectors: transportation, buildings, and the grid. So getting us to zero emissions across all of those areas. And, I think the organization at large, we sort of started out as a litigation law firm, and but by now, I think a lot of us do appreciate that there's a lot of different tools that we can use, and litigation is just one of them. In our Right to Zero campaign, we really believe in this. So we use all sorts of tools. We use litigation, we sue when we need to, we advocate, we work before different agencies. In my work, I do a lot of work before our air agencies, so I can talk a little bit about that later on with some of the projects that I'm going to share. We also do a lot of communications. We've got just amazing communications folks. They do lots of media, and because so much of our work is also public facing, right? Getting the hearts and minds of people and informing them about what's going on, and getting that to also influence our wins. And then we also do a lot of coalition work. So working alongside our coalitions. And one of the things I'm going to talk about later too is some work that we're doing in coalition with others, but also Sierra Club is a part of that coalition. And yeah, we're doing this work at federal, state, and local level. So I'll give some examples. At the federal level, for instance, one example is filing a petition to ask the US EPA to adopt new regulations to clean up pollution from trucks, trains, ships, things like that. At the state level, one of the things that I've been working on is pushing, our state air agency, which is called the California Air Resources Board, to again adopt strong regulations to clean up pollution from trucks, trains, all sorts of other equipment. And then at the local level, one example is, we sued to try to stop Amazon from building a new really huge air cargo terminal that now has been built in San Bernardino. So that was one project, and that's ongoing litigation. And yeah, so we're just doing a lot of work. And this Right to Zero campaign as well has grown from California, and it's now become a national campaign. So we're doing it all over the place. But I want to stop there. Is it a lot of information? Do you have any questions? All right, I will take silence as it's all good. So here's a roadmap of what I'm gonna, three projects I'm gonna talk about. So I wanted to kind of, provide some examples of the different kinds of advocacy that we do as part of the campaign. And so I tried to pull things that are a little bit different from each other in different venues, focusing at state level, but then also the local level, administrative advocacy work, but then also work where we are working with our partners. And then, yeah, so first thing I'll talk about is rules to clean up pollution from refrigerated trucks across the state. So I'll introduce what those even are. Next, I'm going to talk about rules to clean up pollution from rail yards in the South Coast region. And then finally, talk about some of our work transitioning our school bus fleet to zero emissions in LA County. So why do we think that we need to electrify? So there's a lot of reasons for this. First and foremost, health is a primary reason. we know that there are so many different pollutants from combustion vehicles, from burning fossil fuels that are really harmful to our health, especially when we're exposed to them over the long term, but even in the short term exposure as well. So NOx, or nitrous oxide, from medium and heavy duty trucks is the largest category of mobile source emissions. This just means like it's highly polluting, and these larger buses and trucks and larger equipment like that, NOx is a really big pollutant, and exposure to that can cause asthma, lung disease, premature death, a lot of really crummy things that unfortunately communities of color are often most exposed to, because projects like this are sited in areas where there's where folks have less power, and so that's a very unfortunate consequence, and that really guides a lot of our work, is trying to combat some of those things. And one of the big things that we try to do is, you know what, I'm going to save that for after. So, so that's some of the reasons why we need to electrify. Another, another great thing from our work is that 2 years ago in 2020, the governor issued an executive order that requires that all trucks and buses across the state will need to be zero emissions by 2045. So this is really great. It's something that we can tie a lot of our work to as we advocate to try to clean up pollution from the transportation sector, but we need to have it all done by 2045. So it's really this like thing that we can hold on to. So with that, agencies across the state need to implement this mandate by adopting regulations. So a lot of the work that I'm going to talk about, or two of the projects that I'm going to talk about, is actually air agencies adopting regulations to implement that regulation, or to implement that mandate. Okay. So refrigerated trucks. This is a state level project that I'm working on, which means that it would impact all of California. This is a rulemaking that would regulate what are called refrigerated trucks. I have some photos up here. And so these refrigerated items, they transport cold storage items, and they bring them to places like grocery stores, which are often located in communities. So these are things like ice cream trucks, or, if you look at the trailer TRU on the right, that's something that, will drive up to your grocery store and then be sitting idle there for quite a while in order to keep the goods inside cold. And then this will emit a lot of pollution. And because grocery stores are, of course, sited in our communities, because we all need to go to the grocery store, it means that all of us are really suffering from this pollution. So our state air agency, the California Air Resources Board, it acknowledges this and is aware of all the pollution from these trucks, and so they decided to create a rulemaking that would clean up all of this pollution. So this is actually going to be a two-part rule. The first part is going to address truck TRUs, which I have circled in red on the slide, so you can kind of see what those are. And then the second part of the rule is going to address all those other ones, and the agency is going to get to that in a couple of years. But for these refrigerated trucks, the rule is going to require that all of them on the ground have to be zero emissions by 2029. So this is within 7 years. And they did analyses and found that this rule alone would save 177 lives, and it would save 1.75 billion in health benefits. So it's really clear that, even though it is just a small category of a vehicle, cleaning it up and getting it to zero emissions can have really life-saving consequences. So this rule, one of the reasons that I'm really talking about it right now is because the board will be voting on this rule in 2 weeks. Exactly, February 24th at 9 a.m. And so, you know, we never know what might happen, but it, you know, we expect that the board is going to vote to pass this rule then. So that will be really exciting. And yeah, and hopefully if you're interested, you can read about it, or, you know, attend a meeting if you ever like, and you know, that's always really great. And so then the second part of the rule that's going to address those other three categories will come. The agency will be working on it in a few years in 2024. And part of the reason why they did push that out and sort of separate the rule is so that they can wait for the technology, give the technology some time to develop, so that all these other things can also go to zero emissions, which would be really great, because then it means that there's no pollution. So another area I wanted to talk about that is also at the, oh, did I see a hand?
What kind of, well, obviously we need refrigerated trucks to keep the food cold. What kind of progress have they made in developing an alternate solution?
To the pollution from the trucks?
To a refrigerated truck that does not pollute.
Oh yeah, no, great question. So they actually have developed technology that is electric. And so it is zero emission. So it is the alternative, and it's already here, it's already working. And so the rule is actually gonna just like require that to be, you know, across the board within 7 years. So it's actually like quite a fast turnaround. But I think they feel, you know, they feel really confident that because we already have the electric refrigerated trucks, that we can do it.
Can they convert these trucks?
I think so. I think they have, I'm not 100% sure on this. I'm not like in the weeds on it, but I am pretty sure that they can retrofit. So there are those abilities too. Yeah, David, I see your hand up.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So you're talking about NOx right now. These data are for NOx alone? Or all types of pollutants?
So 12 tons per day of NOx. And then the health benefits are, you know, it's measured in health benefits, so not in NOx.
And so that would be 1.7 billion in health benefits per year.
It's over the life of the rule. I think it's over a decade.
Okay, and that's within California, I assume.
Yes.
You can tell I'm a scientist. It's all
saves
177 lives over the life of the truck.
Over a decade. So
over a decade, and TRU is that truck refrigerated units. What is it?
It's transportation refrigeration unit. Yeah. I should have said that. So that was.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Thanks. That's it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question. Pam?
Can I ask you a quick question? Can you hear me?
Sure. Yeah. Jerry, go ahead.
Go, Jerry.
In order to generate, in order to keep those refrigeration units going, we have to burn some more diesel fuel to generate the electricity right? I mean.
So, yeah, you know, we need to think about how our electricity is powered. And that goes back to the grid piece of things. So at the same time that we're trying to electrify the vehicles and the buildings, we also want to be electrifying how our grid is powered, or I'm sorry, cleaning how our grid is powered. And so, you know, we've got a lot of colleagues and partners and other folks that are working on that side of things. So, you know, the goal is that it's all sort of, we're working on all these things at the same time, so that once we, you know, as quickly as we can, the grid can be powered by 100% renewable energy, and we won't have to be burning fossil fuels to power all these things. But even with a grid that is powered, or electricity that is powered by fossil fuels, zero emission, you still have less pollution by using electric vehicles, even if it is powered with a fossil fuel powered grid.
Yep.
Pam?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend who is a proponent of using rail to get all the materials around so we can get trucks off of the highway or off of the freeways. And but what he's saying is that the trucks should be more the distributors, and so they have a battery set up so that they can charge up every night. And then the trains do the long haul, and they carry the heavy batteries to really long haul everything so that we can cut down on all the truck traffic in general. So is that the best strategy, or is there, what are we thinking about as far as getting supplies around?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. And I'm sure a lot of folks would have different opinions on it, but I think generally, I guess there's a lot of different issues that you're raising, right? Like when it comes to how all of our freight system is powered, we want it to be powered with energy that is not polluting, right? So that is electric power. And so that applies to rail as well. And, that's a whole other world that I do work on and I'm very excited about. So I'm happy to talk about it. But so on that sense, just getting all of it to zero emissions is really important. But then, like you're saying, there's this whole other sense of, just living near hubs or areas that are industrial. Like that's not a pleasant experience, and people don't typically want that. So how do we plan out the system so it's actually serving people and serving communities, and not just sort of dumping things or putting things in their backyards when people mostly don't want that. So I think what you've proposed or what your friend has suggested is definitely an approach. And I think that makes sense, kind of like having the trains electrifying those trains and then having them do long haul distribution for the most part, and then having trucks that are electrified transporting goods on a shorter scale. I think that's one approach. And I guess I don't have enough enough knowledge on my own to say yes, I personally agree with that, but I think that is one approach that makes sense. Yeah. Any other questions right now? Thanks for having these questions. This is great. Okay, cool. I'll keep going. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is cleaning up rail yard pollution. So pollution from rail yards is, again, really concentrated, and it's really dangerous, really harmful to our health. It is shortening people's lives. Rail yards, like warehouses, like the ports, they are hubs that bring, that kind of bring together polluting vehicles. They bring trains, trucks, transportation refrigeration units, like we were just talking about, yard equipment. It's all sort of concentrated in rail yards, and the rail yards are also often pretty close to communities and people's homes, because that proximity is part of the model that they're using. And so they're polluting our air, they're polluting people's lungs, and all of it currently, or almost all of it at least, is currently running on fossil fuels. So it's just a lot of harm that's happening in these sites. In the South Coast region, so the South Coast region is includes Los Angeles County, I don't know why I'm blanking. Los Angeles County, Orange County, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. So it's quite a big area, not all of, but large parts of a lot of those counties. So across all of those, right now we've got 10 rail yards, and they're emitting 125 tons per year of diesel exhaust. I mean, that is a really, really massive amount. Diesel exhaust is a known carcinogen. It's like one of the worst things that we can be breathing in. And so it's a real problem. So the air district for this local region, for the what I call the South Coast, or what's called the South Coast region, is working on a rulemaking to try to clean up this pollution from rail yards. And so, you know, first and foremost, what in this work, and we work in coalition with other organizations to do this work, but first and foremost, you know, communities that we work with do not want any new rail yards in their communities. And, you know, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, rail yards and other polluting or industrial sources are often cited in communities of color and in communities with less resources. And, you know, this is a form of environmental racism. And so that's really our sort of, the first sort of message is that they really don't want, we don't want new rail yards at all. And if there are going to be any new or existing rail yards anywhere in this region, or really anywhere in the country, we want them to be zero emissions only. So the South Coast Air District, which is our sort of local air district, is developing a rule to clean up pollution at rail yards. And it's actually going to be two rules, two parts. One will be for new facilities, so facilities that rail yards that haven't even been built. So we have 10 already, but they're going to be, there's already proposed to be two additional ones, one in Colton, and then another one by the Port of LA called SCIG. And so the rule that will address new, yet to be built rail yards is what the air agency is working on developing right now. The goal is for that to be voted on in October of this year. And then in next year, the agency is gonna work on adopting a rule for it to regulate the pollution from existing rail yards. So, you know, these are both really big, really important rules. The air agency is doing a lot of other rules on ports as well, and you know, and other things. But you know, this is a big focus that we're working on right now, and you know, we really need the air district to adopt strong rules that protect community health first, and to do this really quickly. So, yeah, any questions on that? All right. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about is also at the local level, but it's not with an air agency. So this is our Zero Emission School Buses campaign. This is a campaign that is focused in LA County. We work, you know, I'm working with my colleagues at Earthjustice and also other coalition members, part of the Los Angeles County Electric Truck and Bus Coalition. So we are very excited about electric trucks and buses in that group. And Sierra Club is also a member of that coalition. And yeah, so we are focused on a specific campaign in LA Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in the country. And we want to get them to have all zero emission school buses by 2035. And then at the same time to have high road jobs policies and all of the future bus procurements that they have. So today, oh, sorry, I went too fast. So today, almost all school buses in the LA Unified School District are powered by fossil fuels. And many are still running on diesel. And like I said before, diesel exhaust, it's a carcinogen. It's, you know, very harmful to our health. And it's especially harmful to children who are having, you know, who have developing lungs. It's whenever I think about it, the fact that we have young children drive or going to school on diesel, but it's just like, it makes me really upset because it's very harmful to their lungs. And then at the same time, asthma is the leading cause of school absenteeism at the LA Unified School District. Oh yeah, Tracy, I see your hand up.
I'm from LA County, born and raised in Gardena, went to school at Hollywood High Performing Arts. So I'm very familiar with LA County, have friends all throughout LA, all parts of LA. I know it like the back of my hand. My question is though, that's great with the school buses. I think that's awesome. What about the public transportation? Are you guys trying to get those replaced? Because that's another issue, is the RTD or RTAs or whatever they call them now. Back then we called them RTDs, but the public transportation, that's another thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it is so important, and it's actually stuff that our coalition has worked on. So working with LA Metro, which is the agency that runs the transportation system at the county level in LA, and then there's also LA DOT, Department of Transportation, which is at the city level. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, we don't have to get into that, but they have actually committed to get us to all zero emission buses by 2030. So that's, that's in 8 years. They are, this was before my time at Earthjustice, but my colleagues and our coalition actually was really instrumental in getting that passed, or getting, and now we are still continuing to work with them to make sure that they stick with it. And they're doing a lot, but yeah, that's like a constant,
Right.
working with them on the implementation of that.
One last thing too, because you mentioned the places where the railroad areas in, like I said, I've been throughout LA. I've hung out in South Central and everything, so I'm very familiar with it. So in the areas that they have, because a lot of those railroads are not even being used anymore in some of those cities, like they have the areas where they store these containers and stuff, but a lot of them are like abandoned, like they've been sitting there for years. So is anybody doing anything about that? Because that's not healthy either, to have that stuff just sit there. And it's not only not healthy, but it's unsafe because of the people that live there. You have gang activity, you have kids playing through there, and a lot of things happen in those areas. So are they fighting against that too? Like maybe, I know you mentioned about the grocery stores, and the reason why I say that, like say for instance, in South Central, there's not a lot of grocery stores there. So are they doing something to combat it? Meaning that, yeah, with the school buses and the railings and stuff like that, but they doing something to take care of those areas? Or maybe you can plant food or something like that. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, like, to help the earth, you could do community gardens and stuff like that and get that junk out of there. But the only way you're going to get the junk out of there is you got to talk to the powers that be to get that stuff moved, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I'm, I think one of the core things of your question is that it's not just about zero emissions, right? Like we need a holistic change. We need to, close these rail yards, get them, bring grocery stores into everyone's community so that everyone has access to food that's affordable and healthy, bring in green space. Like everyone deserves all of these things. And it's not just about switching a technology for another. So I'm, I'm with you on that. I think that our partners are doing some of that work. That's, for better or worse, I think, as part of like Earthjustice and the Right to Zero campaign, my work is like really focused on trying to get us to zero emissions in that sort of specific and technical way. But I think we do have partners and others in the community that are working on the things that you're talking about. And I agree. I think it's absolutely critical. It's really important. Yeah, Pam?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking along those lines. I thought, well, you said there's two proposed. I remember hearing about the Colton, and then you said another one. They're like railroad, what do you call them? They're centers for the railroads to come in, the rail cars to come in.
Yeah,
so there's two
rail
new
yards.
ones proposed. Rail yards, okay, and that's for expansion of rail, I suppose. But is there a way to you know, if they're going to put new ones in, is there a way to require a look at all the different rails and make sense of why those need to be expanded? And should there be some, you know, some pulled out and, you know, like Tracy said, if you're going to put some new ones in, what about all the old stuff? Should that whole system be looked at and then cleaned up to make it worthwhile to have an expansion, you know, a hub here and a hub there? And yeah, so who's looking at all that kind of a ultrastructure for rails now, you know, that would actually do that? I wonder.
Yeah, I think, again, I think that's a really great question. And just like Tracy's question, it's, you know, you're both looking at the system holistically, which is what we really need to be doing. And unfortunately, our laws don't really do that. So the way that, so for these, you know, two proposed rail yards, for instance, the Colton one, and then the Skig project, which is near the Port of LA, there are certain environmental review processes that do apply to them. So that we've got a state one called CEQA, we've got a national one called NEPA, and there's certain environmental reviews that, you know, have to be done as part of that process. And then, so as part of that process, like, unfortunately, it's pretty cabined, you know, they're not looking holistically at the system and like all these other, you know, rail yards and all these things. And yeah, I mean, this is me going to talk badly about the railroads now, but they all, there's always a question, you know, why are we doing this? Like, why are you proposing to add this rail yard when we've had, you know, so much pollution, so much harm, so, you know, all these things. And they will always say, or at least in my experience, they will say, oh, this is not like, this is just efficiency. We are not adding any capacity. This is not capacity building project. I don't think that that's true. In fact, I feel strongly that that's not true. But unfortunately, so in that sense, like, they might say, oh, this is not capacity building because high-speed rail is, you know, taking some of the right of way for this project. So therefore, you know, we need some more, we need to kind of shift that. And it's not capacity building, but, you know, I think when you look at the details, that's not always the case. But I think that was a very long answer that didn't actually answer your question, Pam. But I think a lot of it isn't really looked at holistically. I think that the laws that we have don't necessarily support that. Yeah, David. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. You know, we have in a lot, you know, a lot of the engines are old, filthy diesel engines, right? Really gross, filthy diesel engines they've gotten away with for decades. But in terms of moving things, steel rails are very efficient. And so if we could clean up the locomotives and even in the short run, get them to use on natural gas, which, you know, is better than diesel, and then get them to electric or hydrogen maybe, I think there's a potential. And the other thing is we get these semis off our highways. And I heard one statistic, which was 88% of the health pollutants that are making people sick in the South Coast Air Quality Basin are from medium and heavy duty diesel trucks. So I think there's some potential to get things onto rails. We just have to clean up the locomotives. Because, you know, I mean, why do I sit in traffic forever when I go to see my son at UCLA? Well, a lot of it is the trucks, right? And if we could get some of that onto the rails without having these filthy rail yards, I think there's some potential there. That's all I wanted to say. The other thing I was going to ask you about school buses is, of course, we want to go to electricity and or hydrogen in a few decades, but how much of an advantage do we get to put school buses onto compressed natural gas in terms of health pollutants?
Yeah, so, natural gas has, thanks for all those comments, David. And I'm like, I guess I'll start first with what you're saying about trains. I agree with you. I think that, locomotives are super, super polluting, and they are more efficient than, just like on a 1-to-1, I think it's a 5, locomotives are 5 times more efficient than a truck on average, just given the way that they move and the technology. So, I'm with you. And I think our campaign is, we want all of it to go electric. And we want to get, the freight system there's so many trucks on the road now. And it's really only grew. I'm sure you all, have personal experience with this, just going on the highway. It's grown over the past 2 years with the pandemic as well. So yeah, however, we need to be working on getting the trucks off of our road as well. In terms of natural gas, one of the big things, when natural gas sort of was introduced as an idea, I'm not sure how long ago, but in the somewhat recent past, the premise was it's definitely cleaner than diesel. Doesn't have diesel particulate matter as a pollutant, which, like we were saying before, is so dangerous and harmful. And it's the bridge that we need before electric is ready. Well, that premise is really out the window now, because electric, really across the board, trucks, trains, even like, we've had electric trains with those overhead lines for decades. So, but all these other things that we've actually got more electric technology than we have natural gas technology. Yeah. And so it's actually now become this thing where it's really a lobbying tactic for the oil and gas industry to be able to, still have something that they can funnel into rather than going electric and losing their whole market. So, yeah.
That's a really good answer. So what you're saying is that the electric technology has leapfrogged the compressed natural gas. And of course, we all know the natural gas industry is trying all kinds of nefarious things right now to stay in business. But yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, I remember compressed natural gas buses in the city of Riverside in, I think it was the 80s. So
yeah, and at that time it was that's
way better than the black clouds coming out of the old buses. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Rod?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question regarding just from the legal aspect. Do you find that your work is still mostly sort of defensive for the environment as opposed to like more promotion and offensive of the new initiatives? For example, are you mostly fighting organizations trying to implement old technologies, go back to existing ways of doing things, continuing on with the bottom line being the most important as opposed to considering any environmental impacts of what they're doing?
That's a really great question. And I think what's interesting is it's probably different at like Earthjustice, for instance, depending on the team that you're working on. So the kind of work that you're doing. So as part of the team that I work on, like you kind of identified, a lot of it is sort of proactive. There's almost like, we do a lot of the litigation, like the formal suing and being sued and stuff. Although most of it is suing. But but even besides that, a lot of this work isn't technically like legal. You know, I've got a lot of the folks a lot of the folks that I do work with at other organizations are advocates. They don't have a law degree, but it is helpful to have, you know, some people in the group that do have a legal background, because there are legal questions that come up where you want to have an understanding of that. But
so you do quite a bit of work in coalition building, that sort of thing as well.
Yes, exactly. Like the school bus work, the work on transit buses, that's more in coalition. Yeah, and then on the litigation side, I'd say, you know, I'm still pretty junior. I've had a good amount of litigation experience, but not as much as some of my colleagues who've been practicing for like 15, 20 years. But all the litigation that I've been a part of has been us on the plaintiff side. So, you know, seeing something that, you know, a project that's being proposed that we think they didn't do the proper environmental review, so we're going to sue them to, first go through that administrative advocacy process, file comment letters, raise issues in public hearing and all that stuff. And then if they still don't do it right, then pursue litigation and sue them.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Carrie?
Okay.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, maybe you said this in the beginning, but when the beginning of your presentation, you showed us how, you know, throughout the United States, how big Earthjustice is. And did you mention how it's all funded? I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
I didn't mention that.
Yeah, I'd like to know. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not going to give you as good of an answer as as I should. The main, I guess I can tell you a lot. The big thing is we don't take any money from corporations. We take money from a lot of different sources. So, you know, some of it is from just the public, regular, you know, folks like all of us. There are some what are called major donors or major gift donors. Those are folks that have certain, you know, they have a lot of money and they give us some of that. We get some from like estates or, you know, and written into wills and things like that. You know, but really it is very like diversified. And that has allowed us to, I think, weather some, you know, periods when we may be getting less or more funding. But yeah, one of the big things is that we don't take any funding from corporations, which, like, of course we absolutely shouldn't, because our work is often, you know, that would be a really big conflict of interest.
So it's no state or federal funding at all towards it?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to that right now. It's a good question though. I should look. I will look it up now because because of this.
Thank you. Very good. Nice to know about it all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I kind of covered a lot of the school bus stuff I want to talk about. I guess the last things I'll just say, this is a, you know, very active campaign that we're working on. We think it's really important. And I guess another thing with, you know, with all of this work, because of the way that there are some laws in the Clean Air Act that give California certain authority to do things or like make regulations that go beyond federal regulations when it comes to the clean air. So because of that authority, it actually means that what we do out here in California can be adopted in other states once we adopt it. And we're the only state that actually has that authority. And so it really means that we're on the cutting edge of a lot of this stuff. And the impacts not only, you know, will impact the communities locally and in the state, but really across the country. And then it also often can end up impacting federal regulations because it shows that things can be done, kind of like a testing ground, and then we go do these things nationwide. So it's really cool to do this work. I'm so grateful all the time, every day, to be able to do this work and work with partners. So yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. This was so lovely to talk with you all and have really great informed questions. So thank you.
Nope, trying to unmute. Okay, let's see if I can unmute. Okay. There we go. Yes. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really going to have to look into what's happened. We've never had any problem with the Zoom meetings before this. Sorry, Yasmine. Oh boy. So, and I don't know whether, you know, lots of people, if there was a problem getting onto the links, I'm going to have to look at that. That was, because this was such a good, really good informational talk. I had a question too, is you're mainly a staff of attorneys or lawyers, or how is that? Because is that kind of different, you know, than other nonprofits? Is your structure, you know, mostly legal people?
It's, I think compared to other organizations like NRDC, I think that we have a sort of higher ratio of lawyers to other staff, but we have a lot of like a lot of really exceptional staff beyond support legal staff, but then also communications, our policy and legislation team, you know, funding team, like development team, just like tons of folks that are really doing a lot. But I think our ratio is actually, we do have quite a few lawyers compared to, I think our whole team is like 450, and we've got like over 170 lawyers.
Yeah, because people do kind of solicit or ask you for help as far as, you know, just legal help, and you can actually, you know, run through lawsuits with different groups, as far as I understand, right?
Yeah, we've got lots of different clients. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, well, yeah, I don't know if anybody's up for looking at the old business, you know, from all that mix up in the beginning, but this was just a great presentation. So maybe we'll just leave it at that and worry about our business later. How's that sound, everybody? Sounds good?
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for your patience too. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks. This
everyone.
Was one of the best ever. Really.
Thank you, Pam.
Bye.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye now.
I really enjoyed